Another thing that was really important for me when I was writing Miss E was imagination. Um, I talked about research and how there was certain information that I felt it was really important that I research. So I had the accurate facts, and there were scenes that I could create because of personal experience, things that I had done. I knew what they were like because I was there. I had experienced them. But there's a whole lot of the story that is just left to imagination. And I think definitely when we're writing, that tends to be the most fun. When we just get to make a story up out of our own imagination, we get to create it on our own. So this is a passage that I feel is something that really just came out of imagination. It's not something I could research, and it's not something that I had personal experience to base it on. This is a scene where Betsy is just first meeting Miss E. She's seen her a couple times in town. She has been delivering groceries to her house, just leaving them at the door. There's been a note that just says, just leave it. But she comes there one day and the note's not there, and the money for the groceries isn't there. And she realizes she's going to have to bring them into the house. So this is something that, I had to use my imagination. What is this house going to look like? This woman that lives outside of town and never talks to anyone. She lives by herself. What is her house going to look like, and how is it going to feel? And what is she going to be like? Even though I researched her, at some point I really just had to use my imagination to think about, well, how would she talk and how would she act? A lot of houses have a certain smell to them. Not a bad thing, just the way they smell. Probably the food cooked there, the laundry detergent used, and just the smell that happens as a building ages, all combined together. Something that people who live there never notice because they smell it all the time. The same way, after a little while, a visitor wouldn't notice it anymore. But Miss E's house was smellless. I felt like I was in a museum, like the rooms I was walking by were behind glass, or like I was watching a movie where the camera slowly moved down the hallways, turning from room to room, and I was just viewing them without really being a part of them until I reached the kitchen. I guess maybe it was because Miss E was sitting there, so there was some life to the room, but the kitchen was brighter than the rest of the house and felt alive. When I stepped into it, I felt like I was becoming a part of it, not just standing on the outside looking in. And there was a smell. I couldn't figure it out at first until I saw the red-orange liquid in Miss E's mug. Tomato juice. Who drinks tomato juice? I mean, I guess if you're in a hurry and need something on the go, but sitting at the kitchen table? Figured at some point we best make some introductions. Can't have someone come into my house every week or so without my even knowing her name. I hesitated, still taking in the room and wondering why the woman, who didn't talk to anyone in town, had invited me into her kitchen to make introductions. My mother had hammered into me the lesson about not talking to strangers. My father was more likely to step up, shake a stranger's hand, and turn them into an acquaintance. But Miss E wasn't really a stranger. I mean, everyone in town knew her, or at least knew of her, and she was a customer, and I always talked to them. Elizabeth, I said, but I looked down at the floor as I did. That's how I introduced myself to adults, but at that moment, it didn't feel right. But my friends call me, "What do you call yourself?" Miss E interrupted, and I realized that Bethy wasn't right either. A name for formal and a name for friends, but neither seemed to fit what was happening in her kitchen. "Bets," I finally said firmly, and took a step forward to put out my hand. "Well now, there's a name you seem comfortable with," Miss E said. "Who gave you that one?" From the laugh in her voice, I thought she was teasing me about the nickname, but when I defensively told her that my father gave it to me, she stood and shook my hand. Well, he got that one right, didn't he? Betts it is then. Pleased to meet you, Betts. She walked away from me then, taking some things from the box and distributing them to the cupboards. I waited uncomfortably for her to introduce herself, and she finally said, with her back to me, "Folks in town tell you my name?" I hesitated. "They call you Miss E," I said, and quickly added, "But what do you call yourself?" The kitchen was filled with her laughter, as she enjoyed the irony of being caught in her own question. And it was the kind of laugh that you couldn't help but join in with. It must have been a full minute before the two of us settled down. Finally, Miss E sighed and caught her breath and looked me in the eye. "Thanks for that one, Betts. Haven't laughed like that in a while."